Good evening. Welcome to the Tony Kinnett cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. We begin with a bit of a breaker, and I'm going to refrain from playing the little Fox News breaker alert that I'm really supposed to play. The FCC will have to forgive me at the moment. The Iranian government has now expanded its NOTAM, that means Notice to Airmen, for all of the Iranian airspace. So originally, and by originally I mean earlier this afternoon, after the president began canceling all of his weekend plans, which why begin the news of the evening by saying Donald Trump has canceled all of his plans, canceling left and right? Like, why start there? Because the reaction to this is two things. Number one, in Tehran, it's trying to close down all of the airspace as though the United States Air Force uses transponders. Or number two, the Cubans, which I'm pretty sure Diaz-Miguel Canal is currently wetting himself. There's a lot of nervousness because the president of the United States did something that he doesn't normally do. So what you're supposed to see in this scheduled clip is the president of the United States getting on the, let's see, I want to make sure I get the actual point to point. Instead of following the original schedule for President Trump to chopper to Trump National in Bedminster, New Jersey, where, he's playing a good amount of golf, a little bit on some of the weekends, he instead stepped off of Marine One to then jump back onto Air Force One en route to Washington, D.C. So why is this shift pretty substantial? Well, first of all, the president very rarely cancels golfing over the weekend. Now, again, I'm not, the Trump lifestyle, looking at his schedule. Well, Donald Trump always prefers WWE fights on Friday nights in April and golf in May. That's not something I'm an expert on. But I will say this. The president also announced that he wouldn't be attending Don Jr.'s wedding tomorrow either. He said, quote, "While I very much wanted to be with my son, Don Jr., and the newest member of the Trump family, his soon-to-be wife, Bettina, circumstances pertaining to government and my love for the United States of America do not allow me to do so. I feel it is important for me to remain in Washington, D.C. at the White House during this important period of time. Congratulations to Don and Bettina, President Donald J. Trump." So, first of all, I'm absolutely going to start using my love for the United States of America as ways to get out of events that I'm supposed to attend. Just right up front, that is just absolutely... But what do we actually see going on? Because the rest of the world seems to think that there's things going on, and some of them for good reason. So Axios reported this afternoon that Trump convened a meeting with his senior national security team, at least 5 of those people, of which are just Marco Rubio. So like acting national security advisor, second assistant naval secretary, the guy who's refueling, the windshield wiper fluid in the Boeings, that's all Marco Rubio, man. So anyway, he met with his senior national security team on the war with Iran this morning. And again, according to unnamed sources, he is seriously considering launching new strikes against Iran, barring a last-minute breakthrough in negotiations. Now, some of the other Gulf states put out very lackluster and mediocre statements. I know, that's rather surprising. That essentially amounted to, there's a 50% chance there's going to be some kind of a negotiation. So unless the Emirates are stepping out as the new Poly Market or Kalshi, I don't think that those betting odds are really quite up to snuff here. So about this NOTAM, this Notice to Airmen from Iran, originally the western chunk of the country was a no-fly zone. Now it's no-fly zone for anywhere. The soup Nazi from Seinfeld is now in charge of the airspace in Iran. And this is until Monday morning. All flight operators are still required to receive permission from the Civil Aviation Authority for any flights over or into Iran. Now, as someone who knows probably more than is healthy for him about how a lot of things fly in this big, beautiful world we're in, may I just say LOL when it comes to seeking permission from various authorities around the globe for flying in their airspace. If you spend any amount of time on Instagram and you scroll through enough reels, you too will see civilian radar, little spinning aircraft radar that you can purchase. That's basically what Iran is rocking with at this point. That, and I'm pretty sure a bat screeching sonar taped to a ping pong paddle that they're holding up on the roofs of Tehran. And speaking of Tehran, a plane with its transponder on from the Qatari government was seen at 3:18 a.m. local time. And there's a half-hour difference in that time zone. So for us, that's about 5:48 p.m. Eastern. A Qatari government plane was fleeing Tehran. So basically, the Qataris picked up all of their various associates, ambassadors, I don't know the Arabic word for those kinds of things, and they packed them all on the plane, and they flew towards Turkey. So things are a little sketchy over in Iran. Now, don't worry. I know you're concerned. You're saying, but Tony, what have the Iranians come out and said? I wait all day and night to see what the various Iranian news agencies report. So the Tasnim news agency reports a military source told Tasnim Iranian armed forces have prepared new scenarios for any possible foolishness by the enemy. That is their quote. I'm interested in hearing what these new scenarios are. Some of their older news scenarios were charging toll booth prices in Hormuz by faxing crypto tokens. Yeah. Number two, charging the internet cable that goes up the Persian Gulf. Just think of the old Facebook commercial. That's not how any of this works. Those kinds of things. New scenarios. I'm excited to see what this is. He noted this source for the IRGC to the Iranian state news agency, quote, if the enemy acts foolishly, they will see the third version of Iran's struggle, because the first two versions have been going swimmingly. I will remind you, we still have not seen Muqtada Khomeini. The IRGC, a diplomatic wire to France, noted, and of all the useful things finally from France, a diplomatic wire is quite hilarious, noting that two different IRGC units are trying to communicate diplomatically on behalf of Iran. So you have children, albeit they might actually be children given the age of the draft right now in Iran, both claiming to be the Iranian regime. We have no idea if that is some kind of foreign diplomatic interference. Could this be the Mossad swapping out the pager for a radio? Could be. But at least for right now, there was a diplomatic wire from France reporting that while chewing on their baguettes, they had two different people saying, I'm Iran. No, I am Iran. No, I am Iran. Best of luck to them. Now, this brings us to other news, because the speculation from those who huff paint and lick their elbows is that this is what led the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, to resign. That's the argument that's being made. Tulsi Gabbard resigned. And so she announced today, quote, I am deeply grateful for the trust President Trump placed in me and for the opportunity to lead the Office of the Director of National Intelligence for the last year and a half. Unfortunately, I must submit my resignation effective June 30th, 2026. Now, for those of you calendar keepers out there, that would be more than a month away from now. So not today, not like the Joe Kent guy who said, I'm quitting yesterday. No, this would be, I'm leaving effective June 30th, 2026. And she says, quote, my husband, Abraham, has recently been diagnosed with an extremely rare form of bone cancer. He faces major challenges in the coming weeks and months. At this time, I must step away from public service to be by his side and fully support him through this battle. And as if there needed to be any proof for this, several of the paparazzi-style media outlets have confirmed, yes, that her husband has received this cancer diagnosis. Like going to appointments and things. That this is not something that was invented today. Unfortunately, there are a few individuals out there who have decided that this is the time to be some of the worst people possible. Before we get to those, I want to give you the rest of the structure here. So the president also sent out a post about this, said, quote, unfortunately, having done a great job, Tulsi Gabbard will be leaving the administration on June 30th. Her wonderful husband, Abraham, has been recently diagnosed with a rare form of bone cancer, and she, rightfully, wants to be with him, bringing him back to good health as they currently fight a tough battle together. I have no doubt he will soon be better than ever. Tulsi has done an incredible job, and we will miss her. Her highly respected Principal Deputy Director of National Intelligence, Aaron Lucas, who, by the way, was handpicked by Tulsi Gabbard. Handpicked, not a Trump pick, not a surrogate pick, not a somewhere out there kind of a pick. Aaron Lucas, she picked him. Will serve as acting director of national intelligence, President Donald J. Trump. So there was a nice letter that she put out as well. And since then, by the way, Mary Margaret Olohan, who used to be a colleague of mine at the Daily Signal, she is a phenomenal reporter. Now she's with the Daily Wire. She said, quote, Tulsi Gabbard plans to release the findings of a number of high-profile investigations before she departs ODNI on June 30th, Daily Wire has learned, including Havana Syndrome / AHIs, COVID, weaponization, the 2020 election, and more, end quote. So from my perspective, my lowly perspective here, and looking through all of the feeds, talking to a couple of sources, this is a really obvious one that doesn't require people to be awful. Unfortunately, we do live in the modern day, and awful people are ready and eager, may I say, to be truly atrocious. So first and foremost up is Reuters, who threw out a big breaking alert. Breaking. The White House forced U.S. intelligence official Tulsi Gabbard to resign from her post. A person familiar with the matter said. And then Gabbard posted her resignation letter on X. So allow me to share a little with you how outlets like this do awful headlines. I hate it. I despise these kind of headlines. As the guy, by the way, my team does not come up with the headlines for the show each day or the thumbnail. That is made by me every day because I want to make it as clear as I can that we are not just trying to clickbait you into anything at all. We're trying very hard. And would it have saved a lot of characters? There's a 100-character limit for YouTube's headlines, for example. Would it have saved characters for me just to put Tulsi Gabbard resigns, comma, Trump might be going back to Iran, and have you think, oh, this is the same? Nope. In the headline, we made it clear that Tulsi Gabbard is resigning because her husband has an advanced and rare condition, a rare and advanced form of that bone cancer. And I don't need to, posture and white knight for all of you over, obviously, we hate cancer. Obviously, bone cancer is one of the most painful kinds of cancer. It is often bone cancer that follows a first kind of cancer that is the terminal goodbye. But of course, Reuters, a random source told me, I think they forced her out. And they've cited another lady who left a couple of days ago. Again, for completely different reasons, and Tulsi's office even acknowledged such. It is Tulsi Gabbard who came out after Anna Paulina Luna got on a Fox News interview and very foolishly said the CIA was actively raiding Tulsi Gabbard's office. And that was not true. And Tulsi Gabbard later made it very clear, no, the CIA is not raiding my office. But still, the rumor mongering will persist. So this is, believe it or not, the most tame example. Now we get to the awful. Adam Schiff, who I'm genuinely hoping Tulsi Gabbard's husband punches in the neck, said, quote, this afternoon, Adam Schiff, quote, my thoughts go out to Tulsi Gabbard and her family as her husband battles this serious health problem. I hope and pray that he makes a speedy and full recovery. While the circumstances around her departure are deserving of our sympathy, let's be clear. Tulsi Gabbard's only positive contribution to our nation's national security is her resignation. She politicized intelligence. She dismantled critical agencies keeping Americans safe. She weaponized the intelligence community. Adam Schiff is accusing Tulsi Gabbard of weaponizing the intelligence community. Again, after we know about Arctic frost, after we know about the situations regarding her, all of her bizarre, all of the bizarre John Brennan and James Comey situation. I mean, gross for sure, but I'll continue here. Baseless election fraud claims.
Nope.
And more. We must ensure that her tenure, marked by a devotion to the person of the president and not to the security of the country, represents a terrible exception at DNI and not the new normal. What an absolute coward and scumbag. Now, I have a lot of worse words that perhaps I might use for this particular piece of excrement. But again, I mean it when I say that if, like Will Smith climbing onto the stage to slap the man in the mouth, if Tulsi Gabbard's husband punched Adam Schiff in his pencil neck, I would smile. Because this is a disgusting thing to say. Congressman Sri Tanadar from the wig and drawn-on eyebrows and a horrible representation of Michigan said, quote, Tulsi Gabbard is resigning. Good riddance. The Iran war has been the biggest display of intelligence and competence in decades. That's really offensive to Sri. How could you say? I don't care. Good riddance to the woman who's going to take care of her cancer-ridden husband. By all means, I hope that every time you open your phone, there is a picture of a middle finger to you for the rest of your days. Chuck Schumer almost made it out of the woods here. As my thoughts are with the Gabbard family as they face this difficult diagnosis, and I wish them strength in the days ahead. But you don't have to put a but there. Just wish them well. Just wish them out. Just wish them out. People know how you think. People know how you feel. You don't have to, and before you say, oh, you're just criticizing one side, I made it very clear when Rob Reiner passed away that I thought the president's response was disgusting. I did. I'm sorry. I don't have to play super alley-ooper shoots and ladders 4D chess here to say that you don't need to throw a but. Donald Trump must not treat this as a vacancy. One of the worst, those from Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks. He said, of course, Tulsi Gabbard might have stepped down today because the bombing starts tomorrow. Hard to know until tomorrow. So, while Cenk Uygur took a couple of seconds away from humping goats, I'd like to mention that she's still in office until June 30th. I don't know if you know this about the way the calendar works. I don't know. Maybe in the whole Turkish nonsense calendar, I don't know, they're counting with sticks and goofball mud while genociding the Armenians. But just a little bit of a notice here for you. June 30th isn't tomorrow. Stupid. Absolutely stupid. Mehdi Hassan, same thing. So you do not have to be a terrible person. And yet, consistently and still and at every opportunity, what we see is an opportunity to showboat, to just openly showboat in theater style every single event that is going on into some part of a broad and grand conspiracy. And if you question it, it's because you've been bought out by the Jews or whatever. So just nonsense, absolute nonsense. We pray for her husband's recovery. Again, bone cancer is a horrible thing to deal with. We applaud Tulsi Gabbard. Again, of a lot of the ladies that the Trump administration appointed, Tulsi Gabbard, along with Susie Wiles, along with Secretary McMahon, along with Kelly Loeffler of the Small Business Administration, which, by the way, our White House correspondent, Elizabeth Mitchell, interviewed Kelly Loeffler. It's an excellent interview. That's over on our YouTube channel. You should check it out. They put the noses to the grindstone, and they got to work. And American people do, in fact, like that. Tulsi Gabbard was never podium Barbie, not even for a second. And so those things aside, to make that clear here, it's very disgusting to see the way that she's being treated. Wish her husband well. We're going to go to the commercial break real quick. We're just going to pick up the radio and TV crew out of that commercial break this Friday. Then we're going to get into some huge updates on the immigration side of things. We're keeping an eye on the Iranian situation. There is reportedly some fighter jet activity over Western Iraq. To be fair, there are very few days these days in which there aren't reports of fighter jet activity over Western Iraq. Western Iraq is away from Iran, by the way. So there are a lot of both governments and private agencies that use the wide, dusty, flat surfaces that have been built and then left behind in Iraq. But we're keeping an eye on those just for you. Don't go anywhere. A lot more to cover tonight. Forgive me for getting maybe a little bit emotional there, maybe more than was necessary. Some things do get under my skin. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal.
I'll be the one you see.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
It's gonna be me. All that I do is not enough for you.
All right, you want major immigration changes, lawsuits, federal judges issuing contradictory rulings, basically throwing paint balloons at each other. You got it. And a lot of this started with the Trump administration announcing brand new USCIS. So that's the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services. new guidance that would largely end the practice of allowing migrants on temporary visas to stay here in the country while they wait for green card approval. What does this mean? That if you are applying to come to the United States, you do not get to stay here, and then we just trust that you're going to show up for your hearing or your special day, whether you are accepted, rejected, or whether there are additional questions as the United States receives information from your prior government, or in the case of Somalia, because we used Kenya to vet people from Somalia for a number of years. Now that practice has also been answered. Things do trickle in. So now what they are calling the original intent, according to USCIS Director Joseph Edlow, of immigration law, spokesman Zach Kaler argued the previous system incentivized loopholes, made it harder to remove denied applicants who overstay. That's the summary given by the Daily Caller, who did a pretty stellar report on this. The USCIS says, quote, "From now on, an alien who is in the U.S. temporarily and wants a green card for permanent residency must return to their home country to apply, except in extraordinary circumstances. This policy allows our immigration system to function as the law intended, instead of incentivizing loopholes." So there are a couple of pushback little miniature lawsuits that are being thrown forward here. The, quote, Nationality Act of 1940 required all petitions for permanent residence to be made at a courthouse inside the U.S. That's what some of the counter arguments are claiming. That doesn't make any sense, though, because you still will show up to a courthouse to make your case. The documents are still filed in the courthouse. That doesn't mean you have to still be there. And the way that you can disprove this is, are there any cases in which an immigrant filed these bits of information via a lawyer or over the phone? And the answer is yes. What year? 1941. So for all of the Twitter and social media lawyers who will search something on Grok or ChatGPT or whatever it is you're using and say, oh, I have found out actually this law. I remind you yet again that FDR literally sent his lackeys around during his administration burning boxes of federal precedent so that he could say the law is whatever I want it to be. So we're still scraping some of that stuff back together. Now, that aside, there's some other information here. According to Axios, but cited by Reuters, I love secondary and tertiary little journalistic reporting. The United States is temporarily moving immigration lawyers to the Department of Justice to speed up a lot of the legal processes for immigration in the United States. So Reuters is saying they can't independently and immediately verify the report, and it's not entirely clear what moving immigration lawyers to the Justice Department would look like. But what does all of this mean? It means that in the United States, there is just court backlog. The courts are stopped up, jam-packed with anybody, whether they're a citizen, whether they're not a citizen, whether they're a legal resident or they're not, whether they came here legally or illegally, you can sue. It's the modern day duel. There was a time in the during the Revolutionary War, which is why George Washington banned it, and it pissed him off greatly. But also afterward, and then was one of the things that crippled the French, one of the many things, as well as the Confederates, was the practice of dueling. And the idea that anyone could just challenge anyone to a duel, and you ended up getting a lot of young, talented officers shot over honor and being rather sexually excited. That's as young men are wont to do. And so the government said, you know what? No one is just allowed to just duel anyone anymore. That's not allowed. Now, France kept that around until the release of the first Star Wars movie, along with the guillotine. That's another story for another time. But lawsuits are that version for today. We have more courts. The immigration system was never even supposed to have courts. It wasn't. It was supposed to be a judicial matter by the United States. And if you weren't a citizen, you could just be told to get out. The Secretary of State's office used to have dedicated individuals for doing just this. But we've created an entire bureaucratic system it's the legal term for this would just be festering spaghetti. Laws weaving in and out of other laws coated in a sauce of your taxpayer dollars. So that's going to be interesting in the next couple of weeks because, yet again, the appellate courts and the Supreme Court is going to have to get involved. Now, again, the Supreme Court is supposed to be ruling on a small clause about the 14th Amendment and the President of the United States and the subject of the jurisdiction thereof, I don't think that's going to do it. I don't think that's going to cut the mustard. Enough of my analysis on that measure. According to Paul Sperry over at Real Clear Investigations, and one of the best, he's actually the senior reporter over at Real Clear Investigations. According to new court records, ex-FBI Director James Comey has filed a motion to postpone his trial from July 15th to a date to be set in August 2026, citing the need for extra time to prepare multiple motions on constitutional grounds seeking dismissal of the indictment. What does Comey want to do? Comey wants to wait until after the midterms. No. Here's why. If Comey's case is so simple, then it should move through the courts pretty expediently. How do I know this? Judges toss out cases all the time. We're going to talk about one related to another immigration situation, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, Maryland man, here in just a minute. But regarding James Comey here, I've said since the very, very beginning, the issue is not whether James Comey meant that he wanted to kill the president or have him killed with the 86-45 or 86-46-47 thing. That's not what he meant. Or that's not the case, whether he meant that or not. The issue for James Comey, and hear me out, I hear you typing out there. The issue is that he lied about it. The issue is that he pretended he and his wife weren't the ones organizing the shells on the beach. Immediately he said, oh, we just noticed it, and said, wow, a street address. Now it's a problem. So that's a big portion of it. There's some other stuff with James Comey as well. We're going to have to see. There is some other rumblings regarding former CIA director, thank God, John Brennan, because as you recall, it is James Comey and John Brennan who acted on behalf of the Obama administration direct order from the president to obfuscate information regarding Hillary Clinton and intelligence that the Russians were keeping on Hillary and her Quaalude use and her bipolar disorder or whatever it was in the election season, and then decided to turn around and say, no, actually they were fighting on behalf of Trump or whatever. So they've already played these kind of games before. And there are, of course, quite a few individuals that are under investigation for things like Arctic frost, in which more than a few senators were illegally wiretapped and tracked because it was suspected that they were communicating with the president of the United States about national security issues, which, if you didn't know, that's just what the Senate is supposed to do. And the Senate voted, in fact, that for the Arctic frost investigation thing, senators who were found to have been wiretapped and tracked and a whole lot of other unconstitutional things levied against them, that they would be given access to up to $500,000 in damages. One of the people who voted for these things was Senator Tom Tillis of North Carolina. Tom Tillis voted to be given access to what let's say there's this other guy named Tom Tillis would later call a slush fund to victims of unjust prosecution. So Tom Tillis, again, as a reminder, had voted in favor of being given access to a little $500,000 damages fund if he was one of the people that were found to be wiretapped by Judge James Boasberg's illegal hush order to Verizon and AT&T to allow Jack Smith, the same Jack Smith we talked about, whose buddy, who just happened to be a former prosecutor, sent herself a bunch of the Trump classified documents masquerading as cake recipes. Oh yeah, it's not corrupt or anything. Why would you call it corrupt? That's very bizarre. So that exact Jack Smith Arctic frost investigation that Tom Tillis totally voted in favor of giving restitution towards, Tom Tillis is now very, very upset. Why is Tom Tillis very, very upset? Because the president of the United States has approved a fund with the Department of Justice for those who were aggressively prosecuted on January 6th measures, and then they have an opportunity, they have a legal pathway to go and claim damages. Now, what Tom Tillis is upset about is a little bit different from what a lot of the left media is about, and we'll get to them because their argument's really, really funny. But Tom Tillis has to throw a hissy fit. So here you go.
It's stupid on stilts.
Why?
Because it will invariably put us in a position where your taxpayer dollars and my taxpayer dollars could potentially compensate someone who assaulted a police officer admitted their guilt, got convicted, got pardoned, and now we're going to pay them for that? That's absurd. The American people are going to reject this out of hand. When you take money from me to give to a purpose that I vehemently disagree with, that's tyranny, and that's what that accounted.
So tyranny. It's tyranny for this damages fund. No. Now, the left is also very upset about this because they say, it's the president's own personal slush fund without congressional approval. How could he do this? So terrible. Oh, my goodness. USAID. The USAID was created during the Cold War so John F. Kennedy Jr. could bribe other countries and say the Soviets want to give you money, but we're going to give you more money not to be communists. And that's what USAID was. It was a slush fund for the president via the State Department. That's what USAID was. It was meant to be. And eventually it turned into the president's personal social justice around the world garbage thing. It is from USAID that the very first AIDS dollars to Africans were sent. It is from USAID that we eventually would see transgender theater in South America and atheism in Nepal and a whole bunch of other stuff that's been covered ad nauseum. But for the media to currently be upset about this damages fund and say, well, Congress hasn't approved any of that. Again, welcome to USAID. So I'm just not as upset as a lot of people. Now, a very weird series of props here over to Jordain Carney. So Jordain Carney is the senior Congress reporter over at Politico. I'm not always a fan of Carney's reporting at all, but she sat down to an interview with Tom Tillis and she got him to start running his mouth. And once he started running his mouth, he didn't stop. So what has Tom Tillis now said he's going to do? He's just going to vote no on absolutely everything. Essentially, he's going to become Thomas Massie over in the Senate. Not even Rand Paul is that bad. He wants to see Pete Hegseth fired. He wants to... he's really angry that there are Republicans that are standing on principle in the White House, meaning they are doing things whether or not people in swing districts agree with it. Like some aspects and some members of White House policy teams that aren't asking for permission before promoting like anti-abortion messaging. Because, well, what if the suburbs of Charlotte don't like that? Oh no. He's upset about that. He's also angry. The reporter asked him, this is so cringy and it hurts me. Are you in your YOLO era? You only live once. So YOLO was an acronym that was used for about 3.5 minutes at least 10 years ago. At least 10 years ago. And it quickly fell out of fashion because it is very, very cringy. So in the year of our Lord, 2026, the Politico reporter said, are you in your YOLO era? And so here, his answer, quote, this grown man, I've actually had a YOLO attitude since the day I decided to run against a 2-term Republican incumbent in a primary in North Carolina to begin my legislative career. I've been YOLO.
Brother, this guy stinks!
Okay. I'm going to take this time to remind you, this is why the 17th Amendment of the United States sucks. It sucks. The 17th Amendment of the United States gave the people of the state the authority to elect their senators once every 6 years. Here's why I don't like this. Right now, you can't recall your senators. I'm not aware, since the 17th Amendment passed, any state or Commonwealth constitutions that say if you don't like what your senator is doing, you can recall him back to the state. Here's the fun thing, though. 36 different states have provisions for their state legislatures that include some kind of recall capacity. Some of those states, by the way, before, again, when we're talking about the 17th Amendment, there's a lot of conversation about it, and I'm more than happy to kind of get into those things. But as far as is concerned, in 1912, when we made the decision to take away from our states the ability to recall senators from the U.S. Capitol to their state legislatures, that meant North Carolina's state legislature can't recall Tom Tillis for being a useless waste of lump. So, just pointing it out, going to just pretending to be super democracy has in fact had its issues. Now, there's more to that later. Maybe if someone asks a mail time question about it, I'll get back to it. There's a lot of fit throwing going on in the House, too. And this is possibly going over to fistfight territory. So on this on this particular measure, and I do want to be, pretty clear here. There is a very weird obsession on the left side of the aisle to impress people by just ratcheting up the curse words you're using. I mean, I'm sure you've seen that one representative from the West Coast who said, I don't usually cuss, but we have to F Trump. And everyone was like, what? So the latest example of this is Representative Pat Ryan. He's a Democrat from New York's 18th. And he's super mad the House is going into recess over the week. He's so mad that the House has put forward more bills to the Senate, who, because of guys like Tom Tillis, is doing a whole lot of nothing. The House is like, well, if the Senate's not going to do anything, we might as well just go home for a bit. Have a little bit of rest. Honestly, I don't disagree. Now, should the Senate be on recess or on their pseudo recess, as producer Josiah would put it? No. But here's Pat Ryan losing his mind over in the House, and he's a big boy. He's going to get on his angry eyes and use his swear words.
Well, we wanted.
Oh wait, that's right. I didn't load this particular clip because the word that he says, I wanted to make sure that I got it censored first. Now here you go.
Dodge on the War Powers Act.
These chicken hawk motherfuckers are going to send us home for Memorial Day weekend, where I'm going to honor my fellow veterans that I served 27 months in combat with, and they are going to not even give an up or down vote on continuing this war almost 3 months in, while Americans are paying almost $5 a gallon at the pump. It is fucking pathetic. They use this procedural bullshit argument, and every American should just be absolutely outraged about this. It's a disgrace. It is a disgrace.
Okay, so a couple of things. Just I cannot leave this alone. I really, really don't like it. As just, again, whenever someone has to bring up that they are like super duper ultra soldier boy at any point in time. I really don't. I don't care for it, no matter who it is, Republican, Democrat. I think it's you're stretching it a little bit hard there. And again, intelligence officers are great. All right. Look, I love the S1 shop. I love the S6 shop more than anybody. Well, maybe not more than anybody. No one loves them more than themselves. But intelligence officers, God bless them, who are definitely listening to the show right now. Pretending that you're Geronimo as an intelligence officer. Oh, come now. So again, but he's a big boy. He's all mad. He's like, we're going to totally throw this down. How is we're so mad and all this stuff. Just insane, hilarious stuff on this particular realm of the House. The ladies over on the Democrat side of the House are also having quite a day. So everyone from, again, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to the Jasmine Crockett team, all the way over to Ilhan Omar to Rashida Tlaib, have decided that right before we get to Memorial Day, we're going to say the most insane, nonsensical things ever. So for example, Rashida Tlaib has decided to join the bender and the outrage and the anger over the United States in Lebanon, of all places. Okay. I mean, I guess I don't really see how right now blaming the United States for Lebanon is like where the squeaky wheel needs to be given the grease. I don't really see this as necessarily the issue, but Ro Khanna said yesterday that this is the reason that Democrats lost in 2024. They didn't spend enough time talking about the Middle East and the plight of Gazans and Hezbollah. So here you go, I guess.
Congresswoman, we have a group here today that's going around for your legislation to stop this war in Lebanon. Could you tell us what this legislation is about?
So before we begin, you'll notice a couple of things. So first of all, we're doing the fake walking interview. I hate this. So congressmen and women do not stroll. They don't. And as someone who has been in those very parking lots, including where I met the great Senator Kennedy of Louisiana and shared with me some Southern gospel truisms. Every congresswoman, every senator, every representative, every man, woman that is serving in office, they are constantly surrounded by their gaggle. They are always, at all times. If they're in DC, they're surrounded by their staff. So no one's just casually strolling alone. Also, no one casually strolls in DC. Unless you're the citizens of DC right now, because the city's freaking beautiful. The work that's been done to it is immaculate. Another tale for another time. But the fake interview, you guys know I don't care for those. Number 2, Code Pink is on the books taking Chinese communist regime money. So someone telling us to be moral about foreign conflicts while openly being funded by the Chinese communist news agencies is wild. Now, we'll let her complain about Lebanon.
Basically prohibits and bars the United States from offering any form of logistics support, any assistance in the war crimes that are being committed in Lebanon. We surpassed 3,000 killed already in Lebanon. Even though people claim there's a ceasefire, we know that it isn't, because we keep continuing to see more families being murdered by the genocidal government of Israel. So this is for me to tell my colleagues, this is our chance. We didn't move fast enough for Gaza, but we have a chance to move as quickly as possible to save as many lives as possible.
Okay, so here's the new thing, because she's going to talk for like another 3 minutes. The new Gaza, the super duper new, ultra cool, incredible, wowie zowie, amazing, like task of all tasks here is to make Gaza or Lebanon the new Gaza. Now you'll notice something here. You'll notice that whenever they start talking about Lebanon, there are some things that move away from the conversation really, really quickly. So first and foremost, whenever they're talking about the Gazans, the Palestinians, they always talk about the number of Arabs and Muslims in the area, and those of Palestinian descent, which again, doesn't make a whole lot of sense because history doesn't bear that out at all. But alas, for Lebanon, they never go, oh, well, what about the Lebanese people? And do you know why they don't do that? Because up until Hezbollah came in and started slaughtering people left and right, it used to be a Christian nation that included Christians of African, various Middle Eastern descent, and European descents. But she doesn't care about that. She abhors Christians. And she's not even talking about the people of Lebanon. Again, the government of Lebanon has come around to join this weird, I shouldn't say weird, I mean weird as in, it's unusual to see it come about this quickly. Lebanon has joined, of all of the groups on earth, from its governmental level, Israel, Jordan, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Qatar, and maybe possibly sometimes why Pakistan, because sometimes Pakistan's for China and sometimes therefore who's actually likely to butter their bread after China gets tired of using them. Shout out to Albania. So there's a pretty decent sized coalition that is against Hezbollah, the Iranian cutout group, which Iran has again openly said, yes, we're funding them, yes, they're ours. So at some point, one has to ask why Rashida Tlaib is again allowed to carry out this whole cheering and raising aid for the enemy kind of thing. Because it's not about children. It's not about families. Get out of here. So really quick, I did want to mention, Mark and Jennifer Shelton gave a very kind $5 super chat. You guys do not need to do that. You don't need to. We're very grateful that you do. She said, quote, my husband and I watch this show for your many talented impressions. Of course, the great job you do too. That's very kind, and I appreciate that. I really need to come up with a couple of new, more exciting impressions there for you. Hey, while we're here, there's a really good opportunity to address one other comment that I just happened to see. So from Nuke Wester, Lebanon is 1/3 Sunni, 1/3 Shia, and 1/3 Christian by the Constitution. And do you know what it was before that violent and bloody revolution that brought those new constitutional standards forward? It was like 85% Christian. And also, racial quotas in constitutions, they usually don't hold up so well. So, anywho, we'll move on from that. We're going to bring crew out real quick, pick up the last of the radio crew one more time. We're going to talk very briefly about this Kilmar Abrego Garcia case. And then we're going to get into some media meltdown because it is just precious. Far more news. Again, we're still keeping track of the developing situation in the Middle East. There's no updates to that jet activity stuff earlier, by the way. The Wall Street Journal, citing U.S. officials, again, unknown U.S. officials, has said the U.S. President Trump told his aides at the National Security Team meeting earlier today that he wanted to give diplomacy as it relates to Iran more time. Okay, that's so exciting, I guess. Yeah, sure. Again, unnamed officials are quite the thing. And the President of the United States is now officially back in D.C. The beast has arrived, and his motorcade. So we're going to swing back, pick up the commercial crew, cover more news. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're having fun. And if you're not having fun, I'm sorry. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal, nationally syndicated, first on 93 WIBC. I do want to give you a couple of details on the developing situation in the Middle East. CBS is also now suggesting that while the U.S. is preparing to resume strikes on Iran, as of this afternoon, a very ambiguous time, no decision has been made. Now, I will point out that in the United Kingdom, there are two airfields that were set, one to do some commercial reconstruction over the weekend, and another to do an air show. Both of those have now canceled those planned operations. And again, is that proof that the United States is doing things? No, but those are two airfields that the United States uses for refueling and rebasing purposes. So there is certainly a table that is set. So Cuba's ministry released Cuba's foreign ministry released a very brief statement this afternoon that seemed to be kind of a threat to the United States and deleted it in about 15 seconds. Saying that the Cuban people would stand against any action by the United States. And given that more appeared to be them threatening the aid offered by the U.S. State Department through the Catholic Church, that was deleted rapidamente. So no updates on the Cuba stuff as well, but I'm told the U.S. Nimitz is very hungry. And as a side note here, there is this weird idea that whenever there's a foreign policy situation developing, everyone sprints to Lindsey Graham of South Carolina and asks him, what do you think about foreign policy? Because they know he's going to give them I think we should just go all in, guns a-blazing, and then that'll be a headline. I never ever read Senator. By the way, in the White House, maybe I should or shouldn't be telling you this, people aren't sitting around going, I wonder what Lindsey Graham thinks. No one's doing that. That's not a thing, boys, girls, and squirrels. So on the last side of kind of the Middle Eastern update news, the UAE is now going through its various neighborhoods and cleaning out suspected members of the Muslim Brotherhood. So I've told you guys on the show for quite a bit that we are seeing the United States essentially adopt the United Arab Emirates, which is quite an adoption, as kind of a defense surrogate. So instead of relying on Israel for the Iron Dome and then, counting on the next prime minister is not going to be a left-wing guy and all that kind of thing and all of that. Instead, the UAE being the site for the U.S. building the red, white, and blue dome. We got the golden dome, the iron dome, and the red, white, and blue dome. It's a whole rainbow of domification. Now, speaking of rainbows, the president also called the YMCA the gay national anthem today, but we'll have to touch on that later. The UAE is clearly starting to carry out some wishes of the State Department. If Marco Rubio had nothing to do with the UAE's foreign policy decisions over the last 3 weeks, I'll eat my hat, your hat, and just go ahead and give me an address to a haberdashery. I'll just open up a buffet. So on the natural disaster side of news, and again, I know that it would probably be better for the algorithm if I led off with natural disaster news first, but I really try hard not to do the if it bleeds, it leads thing. On the natural disaster side of news, in China today, 4 people died and 90 others at the moment still remain trapped after carbon monoxide poisoning at a coal mine in Shaanxi. That's in China's Shaanxi province Friday night. The Chinese industrial effort is beginning to show, I shouldn't say beginning, it is continuing to show signs of severe strain because China is rushing to provide as much power onto the grid as possible. And the United States is in a very, very bizarre thing. The advent of data centers, which currently leftist billionaires, Bernie Sanders is very, very angry about it and all of that. The data centers are starting to provide their own power, and it may end up being the gateway to providing nuclear power to the United States, which is a lot more useful than coal long term. Coal is obviously very important. Additionally, data centers in the United States do not appear to be using as much on the power side as we were, on the water side as we were initially expecting. regarding China, though, on the international front, there are several indicators from kind of population schooling data to who they're exporting from the country to attend international classes as foreign exchange students. China's losing its ability to provide an industrial base. What does that mean? It means in the next 20 years, China's going to have a couple of issues. Now, we are at the end of our broadcast hour for the radio and the TV side. We're going to continue on the live stream here on the Tony Kinnett Cast on the Daily Signal, youtube.com/Daily Signal. We've got plenty more to discuss. Right now, we're also getting word that there's a carbon monoxide or some kind of chemical evacuation that is in place in California. I might be reading that wrong. Give me just a second if you don't mind. Forgive the unprofessionalism. Yes, more than 40,000 people have been evacuated in multiple Southern California cities on Friday after officials warned a leaking toxic chemical tank at an Orange County aerospace facility would inevitably fail and potentially explode. There was also an explosion in a shipyard in New York today as well, injuring 6, I believe. A lot of these industrial accidents are going to need to be rectified by either state authorities or we're going to need to see a better response plan that is put forward at the state level to actually see industrial trust for the United States kind of brought forward and reiterated. But again, I don't really prefer to get very analytical about natural disaster or big industrial accident stuff, especially while it's still going on. All right, before we get to the media, Kilmar Abrego Garcia, because some of you asked about it, we're going to dive into it. So a federal judge has dismissed the criminal case against Kilmar Abrego Garcia for vindictive prosecution. Now, that sounds like a kind of a headline, right? Doesn't it? Aren't you amazed and outraged? Waverly David Crenshaw Jr., an Obama-appointed judge, has overturned criminal human smuggling charges against illegal alien Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The reason that he's calling it vindictive, and I think vindictive prosecution, he doesn't write that they're just being really mean and awful. Although the memorandum cites kind of the merry-go-round of deportation. The human trafficking or smuggling charges really should have been levied far earlier in Tennessee and not brought up for re-prosecution where they've just been brought up. Meaning this, the Biden DOJ said no in Tennessee when the Highway Patrol had originally stopped Kilmar Abrego Garcia. They tried to bring those charges back up. It's very, very difficult to get those to stick. It's very difficult. Now, by the way, right now, Liberia has accepted Maryland man and MS-13 wife beater Kilmar Abrego Garcia to be deported to Liberia. And so with no more kind of pending trials, Kilmar's going to be given the scoop. I don't believe that he's going to be sticking around for any long period of time. All right. Now I'm done with this. We're going to swing back out we don't have to swing back out, actually. The broadcast crew is totally out. Let's get into some media boo-hooing. There's a lot of media boo-hooing right now, and I have been saving some of this stuff for you all week because it is just atrocious. It's funny. It's hilarious. Truly just awful. Truly awful stuff. So first and foremost, Stephen Colbert. Finally, The Late Show, Stephen Colbert is over. He was losing $40 million a year for CBS. That's quite a bit. And the media have decided that this is the assassination of JFK. That's how they're covering this. That's how Sean from Indianapolis, an excellent writer, put it. They're treating it like the JFK assassination. The Democrats put up a bunch of pictures saying, "Thank you for 11 great years, Stephen Colbert." Brian Stelter, though, over on the CNN side of things, this poor crying baked potato, he has decided this is truly the worst thing in all of human history. And listen to his defense of comedians here. They're anti-authoritarian guys. They're stunning and brave.
Colbert has been a vocal part of the Trump resistance, in part because he thought it was funny to do so, and in part because it was cathartic for him and many others.
Okay, Colbert was great because he thought it was funny to resist Trump, which I'm learning this for the first time. I wasn't aware anyone found him funny up until this point. And then also because it was cathartic. So It is always hilarious. The left can't help but say that, like, oh, Trump has given us all therapy. Oh, the horror.
He's talked about comedy being anti-authoritarian by nature, and he's pointed out that strongmen leaders often try to silence comedians. Trump fans reject that autocrat label, but Trump has been critical of Colbert over the years, and lately he's been trying to get ABC's Jimmy Kimmel fired. Colbert has been a vocal...
What? Well, Republicans reject being called autocrats, but I mean, well, really, though... Such hackery. Now, the best part, that wasn't the best clip, though. Today, Brian Stelter went on with Wolf Blitzer over at CNN, and he starts whining to Wolf Blitzer that President Trump had tweeted good riddance or whatever about Stephen Colbert. I guess there was a video also, an AI video Trump put out of him throwing Colbert in a dumpster. But it's just this big whining, slobbering fest. And you can even see Wolf Blitzer just... Here you go.
We heard overnight from President Trump, who had wanted Colbert pushed out for years and has now finally gotten what he wanted. The president posting at 1:52 a.m. Eastern time, quote, Colbert's finally finished at CBS. Amazing that he lasted so long. No talent, no ratings, no life. He was like a dead person. You could take any person off of the street and they would be better than this total jerk. Thank goodness he's finally gone. So that's the president cheering the loss of American jobs. About...
That's the president cheering the loss of American jobs. Yes, that's what it is. I hate this at any time. I do. I true. Anyone's like, oh, those are American jobs. So for example, there are news outlets, newspapers, various other outlets that have closed down. Or those who claimed to be journalists who are awful people, horrible hacks, who said the kind of stuff like, for example, about Tulsi Gabbard that we cited earlier this evening. And they've gotten let go. Being happy or okay that they lost that job and that they can no longer spew that garbage and be given tons of money for it, that's not cheering for the loss of American jobs. You can see Wolf there. That's like a laughing moment or like a gotcha moment. And if we zoom in on Wolf's face here, look at the pain this man is feeling. You can almost hear the all around me are familiar faces. I mean, just incredible.
200 staffers will be out of work now that the Late Show lights have been turned off, now that the Ed Sullivan Theater is being emptied. A much cheaper comedy roundtable show from Byron Allen is going to take the place of the Late Show. So we see a situation...
A much cheaper... Well, yeah, because it was losing $40 million a year. $40 million a year. If I start costing the Daily Signal just a ton of money, we went out, we hired, 10, 15 producers. I'm going to leave other conservative or right-wing, pundits' names, out of this because there are a lot of people who hire a lot of producers for a small show. But let's say you got 10 producers and I have like 15 makeup artists and we use the superest, duperest, ultra microphones and the lights and whatever and all of the advertising. And I start racking up this multi-million-dollar bill for the Daily Signal. It would be not just ridiculous, it would be retarded for Rob Bluey to keep me on and just let me do whatever it is that I want. That's silly. I'm in the entertainment business. In the same way, it would be ridiculous to expect that you guys are like owed to come sit down and watch me because I'm an institution, don't you know? Oh, very important, exciting stuff. So hilarious nonsense. Now, the New York Post has done a lot of work covering the Colbert saga, I should say. They did point out that his final Late Show wasn't funny or one of the New York Post articles says Stephen Colbert's final Late Show wasn't funny or emotional at all. It was just like his last 11 years. The New York Post has been delivering just straight up heaters. Right over the plate, 102 mile an hour fastballs. I mean, excellent stuff. And to be clear on that, I don't just mean their written stuff. If you guys haven't actually checked it out before, Pod Force One, which is the interview show on the New York Post, they do the interview stuff far, far better than I do. They give you an inside look each week as award-winning columnist Miranda Devine sits down with lawmakers, newsmakers, and of course, her interview with the President of the United States is pretty top-notch. And it's conversations, candid, unfiltered, and they go way beyond the talking points. You can find Pod Force One in your feeds every week, wherever you get your podcasts. You should subscribe. I don't often recommend other shows just kind of flat out like that, but the link is in the description. So head over to the description, check out her podcast. It's good. It's an excellent interview show. The New York Post is doing the Lord's work in a lot of reporting. For example, regarding a lot of pushback against the bizarre Zoran Mamdani-esque style way that he's governing at the moment. So the New York Post, brand new article out on Zoran Mamdani, facing backlash after reports that he met multiple times with Sheikh Fadhel ad-Sarhani, an anti-Israel cleric who allegedly praised Hamas' October 7th attack as a catalyst for great change, and of course is a Holocaust denier because, why not? According to the report, the meetings continued into 2026 even after the imam's controversial remarks became public, because, of course. And critics, of course, accusing Mamdani of legitimizing extremist rhetoric, while his office says attending religious events does not equal endorsement of every speaker's views. If I started attending the Westboro Baptist Church, you can bet there would be some outrage, and rightfully so. If I started going to Scientology stuff, if I started attending kind of cult-like garbage, well, yeah, there should be a good amount of outrage at that. If you are considered a particular leader, your personal life does matter as it's on display. Now, that doesn't mean that everything is a case for being fired, but the bill does indeed kind of fit. It quacks like a duck in this instance. So on the media side, this isn't just a problem with kind of the far socialist left, if you really want to claim that they're different here. Tucker Carlson has also lost it. And look, should I be smiling because the numbers that some shows are getting are climbing higher and faster than Tucker and Megyn Kelly and stuff? No, that would be very petty. But if you needed a reason why that people like Tucker, who I don't spend a ton of time covering, is losing it, here's Tucker Carlson in his most recent video claiming that he has no idea what Islamic jihad even is. Here you go.
And when people win in a race like this, there's evidence of it. And that evidence takes very familiar forms.
So he's talking about Thomas Massie losing his primary election. Again, by the way, the exit polling, of which there was a pretty fair amount for a House race, those who voted for Gallrein make it clear that it's because Thomas Massie didn't vote in favor of things that they sent him to vote along with Trump for in Washington, and wasted a lot of their time. That Massie wasn't coming back to Kentucky time and time again and saying, hey, what is it that you guys want me to support? What do you want us to push? What policies are Kentuckians looking for? And that got on their nerves. And then also the creepy allying with everything is a problem of the Jews. So anyway, that's the race he's talking about.
Enthusiasm, joy, and just sheer numbers. Like, people show up. They can't believe it. We beat the evil Thomas Massie with his jihadi backers. This is a blow against Islamic jihad, whatever that is.
Whatever, Islamic jihad, whatever that is. Islamic jihad? I can't even remember anyone that's been attacked in the last 20 years by a terrorist. Best of luck to you. Best of luck to you. Again, you can say that people who criticize, again, there are some allegations made that one of Massie's donors happened to be very friendly with Islamic extremism. I've seen those allegations. I haven't looked through his individual donor list. I know that 92% of his funding came from outside of the state or outside of the Commonwealth, just like a lot of Ed Gallrein's funding came from outside of the state, outside of the Commonwealth. A lot of the country participated in this election because it was a bellwether on people doing Marjorie Taylor Greene style performative showboat nonsense in the Republican Party. And Matt Gaetz left before he could be held to a referendum. Marjorie Taylor Greene quit before she could be held to a referendum. Thomas Massie was the first guy who, after Charlie's death, decided to go absolutely nutcase insane. And I say this as a former friend of Thomas Massie, and just lost it. And went cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs until he was the best buds with Ro Khanna and endorsed by The Atlantic. And again, you can say, none of this means that you can't have wanted Massie to win anyway. But by using this to pretend you don't know what Islamic jihad is, you cuck.
Islamic jihad, which along with Hamas is one of the big problems in the 4th District of Kentucky. They've been very, very concerned about Islamic jihad and Hamas and Hezbollah for a long time in Covington.
I've actually spoken to a couple of people in Covington, actually knowing some friends there. And you know what they really don't like? The increase in the amount of Islamic-only communities that are popping up in places like Texas. They don't like the massive impact that CARE has had by sending a lot of jihadi-style ladies to the congressional caucuses. They don't like how New York is being run. They definitely don't like the terror attacks just 2 states north in Michigan. Don't be stupid on purpose. Don't be stupid on purpose. Like Sunny Hostin of The View. So again, as we've said on the show a million and one times, one of the last couple of demographics that the left is clinging desperately to is left-wing women. And again, when I say left-wing women, I want to make this very clear. Ladies on the left eventually age to being one of three kinds of, they look like one of three things. They either look as though they are Pumbaa from The Lion King. They look like Jennifer Welch, like really hyper Botox, blonde, crazy kind of thing. You know, Nicole Wallace, Jennifer Welch. Or they look like Michael Scott from The Office with just grayer hair and round glasses. Now, independent ladies and right-wing ladies, they age in a rather diverse and a total different number of ways. Absolutely. And having a family and friends and faith and a community will do that. But you got to keep the people outraged. And so Sunny Hostin of The View is now out there claiming, again, historic revisionism. So don't know what Islamic Jihad is. And also the 2020 riots from BLM, those were peaceful. No problem at all. Those weren't murderous or violent.
I just think we need to make it clear that there can be no comparison between the Black Lives Matter movement and what we saw on January 6th. So I just want to make that clear.
And that's not the suggestion.
I know that
wasn't
that wasn't your suggestion, but you know, people that watch our show take away different things. So I just want to make that part clear. There were very limited destruction of property and violence during the uprising, the Black Lives Matter uprising, and no threats to the president.
No threats to the president. Probably disagree on property damage, but we don't need to relitigate.
But here's a little bit of property damage, a little bit of vandalism. Probably a little bit of nothing. Just you know, I mean, forget all of that. You know, the mostly peaceful and the firebombing and all of that chaos. You know, the attempted murder. Oh, you know, whatever. Beautiful. Beautiful, exciting stuff. One of our favorite things to do here is just enjoy how we keep receipts, and so we don't exactly forget what happened a couple of years ago. And then when you get into big election seasons, you can simply say, hey, here's all the videos of these things happening. It's one of the reasons that a lot of the major media institutions are no longer maintaining a sufficient grip over the public narrative. And then the kind of swing back kind of a thing, you know, I don't necessarily, you know, I personally don't believe that the influencer age of a bunch of AI generated slop has been that great either, but that's also starting to ebb and fade. So we're going to swing back out really quick. We're going to hop over to the mail time section. If you got a question, we'd love to hear it. Got a couple that we need to get to this week. And maybe a little something special. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Don't go anywhere.
If I could fall into the sky.
This is the Tony Kinnett Cast on 93 WIBC.
Welcome back to the Tony Kinnett Cast here on the Daily Signal. Very good to be with you. We've got a couple of things here at the end that I wanted to tackle with you just regarding the mail time section. A lot of great questions that have been coming in over the week. So again, in the description, there's a link to our Discord. You can send questions over there. One question that I wanted to start with, from Mary Rose. Do any of the ships in the Strait of Hormuz ever turn around or dock somewhere for supplies? How can they not be running out of fuel and food after all this time? A lot of them are. A ton of the ships in the Strait of Hormuz are. And it's actually one of the reasons why there's been such contention, not just with a lot of the countries around the world, but specifically with China and Iran regarding the Strait of Hormuz, because some of the ships that the United States Navy has not let just pass on through have been Chinese. They've been stuck at ports, and the Iranians are not letting them leave. They're keeping them there. There's some hostage situations that were under initial concern, and so they are running out of food. Now, a lot of the other places that are trying to get through, either the United States seized them because they were suspected of being Iranian, or they were just turned around and just sent back home. So that's kind of where things stand there. But yeah, it's a good question. It's just not covered as much because then you also recognize that Iran's holding hostages, again. So from Ari Enforce, this is earlier on, he said, do you think the timing of Trump's announcement minus the after the market closes, and yes, a lot of these announcements came after the stock market closed on a long holiday weekend, which is interesting regarding military things. I'll just say, I've got a strong hunch that after tomorrow morning, when Fox News may drive me out to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway to do a hit for Fox and Friends, if you're up for whatever reason at that ungodly hour, hope to see you there. After that, am I going to get to come home and likely cover some breaking news, which we absolutely do here? Is why you should subscribe to the Daily Signals YouTube channel, because we'll just go live and my producers really should be given a lot more hazard pay. I think it's possible. I try not to make I think in the next 48 hours predictions. I will give you the weather forecaster and go, here in this front over the Strait of Hormuz, it's highly likely that Carg Island may be experiencing some moderate to severe thunderstorms. A high front from a coalitional government seems to be massing on the borders of the Iranian territories. And of course, if you keep an ear out, you just might see a little bit of sunshine breaking out over Kurdistan. Back to you. That's my weatherman report for you from the BBC. So take that with a grain of salt. Which brings me to another question that I've gotten from a lady named Callie. And she asked very, very kindly, she said, why do you say simultaneously on the show that we tune in because your predictions come true, but also that you're a human and you make mistakes? Isn't that trying to have it both ways? First of all, I like the directness of the question. I like it, and I will answer it upfront and personal. When I say I make predictions, and that is why a lot of you tune in because I happen to be right, that is over a scope and a longer period of time. So it's like the stock market. I may invest in a company or a mutual fund or whatever because over time its general rate appears to be going up. Now, does that mean that the stock is never going to have a moment where it dips? Absolutely not. That's not how it works. And if you can find a human being out there who doesn't make mistakes, I'd love to shake their hand. And tell them, actually, no, they're a sinner just like the rest of us. And of course, they need our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Because I have absolutely sinned and come short of the glory of God and do so all the time. There is a risk for this show. We are, as far as I'm aware, the only evening show that begins writing after 4 p.m. It is pretty much a rule that I've set for the staff. The reason we write after 4 is that unlike all of the other network broadcasts across syndication, radio, TV, they've written their entire evening show by about 11:30 a.m. We don't do that. Well, that carries with it risks because you may hear me say, we're going to talk about this and then not talk about it. I may give you a detail and then have to go back and say, oh, hey, by the way, I got that detail wrong. And if there's one thing that is for certain, there might be some clips loaded in the wrong place because we have to get them shoved into the show, and or my name pronunciation skills can get a little lackluster. We try to correct those. Now, on the general broad prediction side of things, I think we have a pretty decent track record because I give you the analysis and the evidence and then put it in front of you. But that's kind of the explanation there. Now, if it's not satisfactory for you, I don't know what to tell you. So that's kind of my answer to that question. All right, other words on the mail time things. From DGB56 BGD. I'm not going to pronounce that. Why are immigrants able to hold a public office here in America? They are treasonously tearing our country apart and we sit back and watch. Come on, man, deportation. So I've seen the bill that suggests that if you are an immigrant to the United States, you should not be allowed to hold foreign office. I would argue a different suggestion. Hear me out. The answer is that, first of all, no dual citizenship should be allowed. I don't think there is anywhere, any way, any time that you as a member of the United States, once you're a citizen, no dual citizenship. Not to France, not to South Africa, not to Israel, not to the UK, not to Japan. Nope, it's the US or nothing. What I think we should be doing instead is enforcing oaths of office. Enforcing oaths of office is far more useful than just saying, again, some of the best individuals that have served in government have escaped from communist countries and understand the threats of it. Yes, I do think so. Now, on the flip side, are there some immigrants to this country who have caused a lot of issues? Obviously. Duh. And I think there's a cultural aspect there as well. I am always nervous, though, to suggest that in the United States that the government just be the solution. The real answer is people need to decide there are some cultures that are not compatible with the United States. that what it is that you believe and express maybe should ban you from public office. I mean, high trust societies require high trust individuals. Amen. So yeah, that's my case now. And yes, it says from Nuke Wester, some countries don't allow you to renounce your citizenship, so you can be seated in the Knesset or something. That's law. Again, I very much hold to the opinion that renouncing other citizenship should be required. I think that's exceptionally important. Lewis Wisser says, Tony, are you really going to be riding with Tony Stewart? No, I'm not. I will let all of you down and say that as a Hoosier, I'm not the world's biggest racing fan, although I do love watching it. I'm not an expert on IndyCar, although I think it's excellent. I didn't get to start watching Top Gear until way late enough in life. Now, I've watched my fair share of NASCAR races and some IndyCar racing, of course. I'm not an expert on it. I will say this. I was deeply, deeply saddened to hear of the passing of Kyle Busch. A tragic loss. I'm not really sure on all of the details. I know someone said there was some kind of a go-karting accident. Some there was some kind of an infection. But he just passed away. And again, this is also per the New York Post here. I was deeply encouraged, and it actually brought a tear to my eye when I was getting ready for the show, that Kyle Busch's number 8, will not be used again in NASCAR until his 11-year-old son joins, which is great. So I love watching the race for IndyCar. I think it's great. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in something that I'm not. Now I will say that what am I looking for this year? I should probably be very careful about how I say this. Last year it was really funny watching all of the IndyCar Honda engines have massive catastrophic failures. Thank God a lot of them before anyone could get hurt, obviously. But I kind of hope for that kind of stuff again, because that's funny. That is stuff that's fun to watch on social media. I don't know, that's just me. So anyway, yeah, see you guys for that side of things tomorrow. All right, elsewhere on the male side of things here. Checking through kind of a final few theories. Okay, what's with Speaker Mike Johnson making backdoor veto deals with the Democrats in March? I have no idea what you're talking about backdoor veto deals. I would need to see those in person. But, Kyle Busch was found on the floor coughing up blood. My goodness. Oh, it's horrible. Thank you, producer Daniel, for that update. No, sorry, to the question about Speaker Mike Johnson and veto, I haven't heard the news. I keep a pretty close eye on kind of things related to the speaker, but I will say, and I said I would come back here, and I guess now, thanks to your question, we're finally coming back here. Speaker Johnson gets way too much crap all the time. That man has, with a majority of like 1 or 2, has passed more bills out of the House of Representatives than I think we've seen in a very, very, very long time. A very long time, since before we were doing a lot of the omnibus stuff. And it's the Senate who hasn't been passing them. I recommend our interview with Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin to kind of get more on that. So that's kind of my sketch there. As for primary election results and who's in and who's out, I'm not going to dive into too much because there's still a lot of runoff stuff to do. So we'll get back to some of that. Next week, obviously, we'll have Cornyn versus Paxton. There's a lot of whining just about everywhere on the Cornyn side of things. There's a lot of people that are throwing their toys on the ground. I'm not terribly worried about that election. Also, there's a lot of, Tallarico's got a real chance that he can totally flip the election because people in Texas don't like Cornyn. Tallarico is a nutcase, and if there's one thing that we learned over the last couple of years, it is that when you actually get out and air Democrats saying bizarre and wild nonsense, I don't know. I don't see it. Same with Graham Plattner as well. What do you think about Kevin Warsh at the Federal Reserve? I think he's great. I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed because they are going to want him to go in and just slash rates left and right. I don't think that as long as the Iran conflict stuff is going on, that's going to happen. You want a real wild prediction? I'll give you a real wild prediction here. I'll predict, gazing into my crystal ball or whatever. Here you go. Kevin Warsh telling President Donald John Trump that he would likely not be able to lower interest rates until the Iran situation has concluded would make a very good rationale with how President Trump thinks to just going through and finishing off the Iran stuff. Now, again, Kevin's only got one vote. He doesn't just unilaterally have the power to knock stuff over. I wouldn't be surprised if that was a part of it. There you go. So that's one last thing. I'm sorry for taking off the glasses and making some of you drink. Oh, you guys crack me up. I really appreciate you guys. You're a great audience. I think you guys are wonderful. You guys make doing the show so easy. If we have to be back over the weekend, the best place to hear about it, subscribe to the YouTube channel. There's a bell you can hit as well, I guess, that works sometimes. The best way, the bestest of best ways, though, in the description, I'm serious. The link to the Discord. There's a little shows channel, and it tells you if we're going live with some advance warning, and we'll deliver you the update if Motaba Khomeini really ends up being extra dead or only kind of dead and gay and legless. So that said aside, here's from CBS News. The Trump administration was preparing Friday for a fresh round of military strikes against Iran, according to sources with direct knowledge of the planning, but no final decision has been reached yet. There you go. So this weekend, maybe? I don't know. Either way, have a wonderful and thoughtful Memorial Day. Thank God for the men and women who gave their lives for this country. We'll be back on Tuesday, unless breaking news brings us back earlier. It's the Tony Kinnett Cast here on The Daily Signal, nationally syndicated and first on 93 WIBC. Y'all, take care.